everybody, Nikki Burnett here, Taste Life Nutrition. I'm a functional nutritionist and I practice strategic evidence-based consulting. I wanted to start a series on food intolerances. So this is going to be the first day of a series that we talk about when it comes to food intolerances, food sensitivities, food allergies. What are the differences and why? So we'll hit on a few points today, and we'll go in order as we talk about what are they, what causes them, what are the processes, and what can we do about it. So I don't know how many this will take. Well, it kind of depends on timing, but wanted to start here. I hope everybody's having an amazing summer. It's a beautiful Friday, and I'm excited to get to talking about this. So one of the reasons I wanted to start a series on food sensitivities and intolerances and allergies is because so many of us don't realize we have them. We may know we have allergies. Allergies are really quick responses, right? But food intolerances and sensitivities are very different. And we may not know that that's something that we're suffering with or dealing with. And from my own experience, personal experience, as well as being a practitioner, there are things that I have learned about myself over time. And I want to give a couple of examples because I think when we give examples of what others are dealing with, we start to think, oh, okay, maybe that's what might be going on with me too. So there was a time, it's been quite a few years ago now, but I was eating bread and pasta just like anybody else. And I was in my 40s and I had these really crazy zits on my face. And so over time, I started to learn that it was a gluten problem, and it just took time figuring it out, and it was kind of by accident. But I'll tell you that we had a family trip back last week. And, you know, there are just some times that you just don't ask the family what it is they're putting in their food, and, you know, you're just not as careful. Well, now, for me, it takes 8 days for a gluten sensitivity to show up. And it's hard to see on camera here, but I have these spots here and here now, and there are a couple here that have shown up because, well, there was gluten in some of the food. And it's okay. It's not a huge deal. You know, I don't have serious reactions, but some of us have these breakouts that we don't realize could come from gluten, or they could come from dairy or any other foods that maybe we're sensitive to. I'm also learning about myself that I have some dairy sensitivities. I'm pretty sure of it. And genetically, I'm able to eat dairy. And I had a raw dairy share for a long time. But I am finding that it makes me really mucusy. So when I cut it out, there's no mucus and no drainage and no junk. I mean, that's no fun. But if I eat it, then there it is. And of course, everybody has cheese when you're on a family vacation. So I really noticed it. So anyway, I want to dig in a little bit into what the differences are in the allergies, as well as in the sensitivities, and what to look for when it comes to the differences in the two, okay? So an allergic reaction is an immune response, and so is a sensitivity. But what happens is it creates an antibody, and then the antibody attaches to an antigen. And so this creates an immune response, and then it begins an attack. So this is a quick reaction. If you think about kids eating peanuts and having anaphylactic shock, or an immediate redness, or, you know, things like that. So an immediate reaction is typically an allergy. There are delayed allergies, but in this case, we're going to talk about this response, this allergic response that we see, you know, that happens quickly, right? So you can also think about, you know, your seasonal allergies that happen quickly, things going around the air and you're stuffy. Those are true allergic responses. And so what can happen is they end up creating this histamine response. And so there are things that can happen, like dilation of blood vessels, and blood pressure can decrease. It can also increase. There can be skin reactions, swelling of the mouth and throat. And these are your typical quick allergic reactions. As you know, some of them are really severe, just like in an anaphylactic shock situation. And there are lots and lots of people who are dealing with this, and it's just increasing. The numbers of sensitivities and allergy cases are increasing significantly. And so we wonder why this is happening. And so we won't get into that today. We'll get into it later in the next couple of segments. But it is increasing. And I think there are good reasons for, it's not good reasons for why it's increasing, but we know why it's happening. And there's something that we can do about it, which is why I do what I do, right? Okay, so intolerances and sensitivities. These are different. They are immune responses, but they're a different part of the immune system. So allergies are considered IgE responses, so it's immunoglobulin E responses. And sensitivities are more IgG responses. Okay, and so these don't usually seem to be as bad, but in some cases they really can create more of an issue even than allergies can. A lot of reasons why, or one of the reasons why is because it can take 2 to 9 days for a sensitivity to show up. And so we don't know what we're sensitive to, why we're sensitive to it, why we're reacting, why are we having GI distress, why are we having foggy brain or breakouts or joint achiness, or all of these symptoms that can come from food sensitivities and intolerances. How do we narrow it down when it takes so long for the immune system to react and for us to know that there's a reaction there? It's hard. It really is. And so again, this is why I do what I do, because there are ways of learning and understanding, mostly through testing, but you can do an elimination diets and that kind of thing. So it's not easy, but it can be done. And what's really amazing is when you start to learn what your sensitivities and your intolerances are, and you start to learn your body, and then you begin to repair and balance your body. These things don't have to happen, don't have to stay there forever, right? Now, I think for most people, gluten, if they're sensitive to gluten, it usually kind of stays that way, because gluten is just inflammatory, period, in our country, right? In our country, we've hybridized it. It's a problem. Heirloom wheat, totally different story. But keeping in mind that we have the ability to balance and to repair our bodies, and there are things that we might be sensitive to that we're no longer sensitive to after we've repaired our body. So things to look for when it comes to food intolerances and sensitivities, kind of interchangeable. Digestive distress, so gas, bloating, cramping, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, constipation. You can also, things that aren't GI related can be headaches, mucus, talked about, infertility, brain fog, joint aches. These are all things, and I think it's all over the place. Symptoms can range widely from person to person, and I think that there are some random symptoms that we don't necessarily attribute to food sensitivities and intolerances, including one that I just said is infertility. That just it's creating a stress on the body, and the body says, hey, I'm not ready yet to carry a baby because I'm trying to fight all of these other things. And so understanding your body is always, always key. So we want to look at your body and how it's functioning. This is why we do functional lab testing, right? We want to understand your body. We want to look at it from the inside out. We want to know what it's telling us so that we can go in and repair it, okay? So there's a stat here. It's an estimated 3 of 4 people suffer from food intolerance, varying in severity. Everything from entire food groups to specific chemicals found in foods that can lead to symptoms that we've just talked about. So it's really, I just keep saying it because it's just really important to know who you are, know your body, pay attention. You don't have symptoms just to have symptoms. A lot of us blame aches and pains and disease and problems on age and bad luck and genetics, and it's just really not the case. If you have seen my website, or you've seen me talk at all, we do have control over our genetic destiny, and these aches and pains and things that we deal with aren't things that we have to deal with forever. So learning and understanding who we are is one of the most important things that we can do. So one of the things I think I want to talk about is leaky gut syndrome. The leaky gut syndrome it's super interesting, and I see it all the time. We can test for it. I can guess if someone has an autoimmune condition, they have leaky gut syndrome. But we can also look at tests and see that the cells are coming apart. And so that's what's happening with leaky gut, is you have these cells that are super tight together. And so you can think about in the gut lining, the cardiovascular lining, the blood-brain barrier. And so these cells are super close, and what happens is this chemical called zonulin increases. And so zonulin increases and these cells come apart, and you have this this gap here, right? And so you've got these cells that come apart, and it can happen all through the body. And what happens? So you have things getting through the cells into the bloodstream that aren't supposed to be there yet. So we have toxins, large molecules of food, bacteria, yeast, parasites, whatever it might be that's getting through into the bloodstream. The body starts to freak out. It's not supposed to be there yet, or it's not supposed to be there at all, maybe. And so this creates an inflammatory response. And then what happens then? Inflammation leads to disease. It leads to autoimmune disease. It leads to chronic disease. It can lead to mental and emotional disorders, right? All disease, the basis of all disease is inflammation, period. Period. If there's something going on, there is an inflammatory process going on, and we need to take care of it. Essentially, we got to put out the fire, right? Okay, so what happens is when we have leaky gut syndrome, we might find that we have all of these food intolerances, but it's not because of the food, it's because of the gut. And so I've had clients who we've done food sensitivity tests, and they come up and they're green, yellow, or red, all of them, all of the ones that I've seen anyway. There are multiple tests, and there's only the only one that I use, hands down. It comes up green, yellow, or red, and then it tells you sort of where you are in the spectrum. But I've had clients who show up red. Just the entire thing is red. And so I can't go to my client and say, sorry, you can't eat today, or you can't eat for the next 6 months. What we have to understand is it's not the food, it's the body. And so there's an upregulated immune response. The body is totally out of whack, and we have to squash the fire. We have to bring balance back to the body so it knows what to do with the food. And so it knows that the food is not there to attack, okay? So if leaky gut, we kind of hit this a little bit, but if leaky gut goes without, repair, then lots and lots of things can happen. So digestive distress. So we've got nutrient deficiencies because we're not absorbing our nutrients properly. Lots of immune reactions. And then, what we have to do, this cannot be done through food. As far as I know, we cannot just repair leaky gut through food. There are certain nutrients that the gut needs in order to bring those cells back together, bring the zonulin down. And some of it is food. I mean, some of it is we want to take out gluten because gluten raises zonulin. We want to take out the inflammatory foods because those things, inflammation is gonna create more issues. So we do an anti-inflammatory diet. But there are things like glutamine, like aloe. High dose glutamine is really, really good for leaky gut. The gut uses more glutamine, and I think the body itself uses more glutamine than any other amino acid, period. So glutamine is really important, but there are also other nutrients that are really important too for helping to soothe and to repair that gut lining. Keeping in mind that it's not just the gut lining that needs the repair, but potentially, all of the endothelial lining and the blood-brain barrier. All right. Okay, so I want to move on just quickly. Let's talk a little bit about inflammation. And I think really we've hit it for the most part, but inflammation is just an immune response. And inflammation is I said this already, but it's the basis of all disease. Do not blame genetics and heredity for all of your diseases. There are about 5% of the diseases out there that are truly related to genetics, okay? The rest of it is lifestyle. It's lifestyle modification, okay? So if you're too stressed, then that creates a problem. But a little bit of stress is fine. It's good to kind of be on your toes, right? I do believe that, but chronic stress is not a good thing. It literally shrinks the brain, okay? So Too much exercise is inflammatory, too little exercise is inflammatory. The wrong foods, too much processed food, unhealthy fats, and the key truly is lots and lots of vegetables. I'll probably say this a million times over, lots and lots of vegetables because they are anti-inflammatory. Now, some people, depending on their health status, cannot do some vegetables, and that's okay. Or even some people may have to only do cooked vegetables, but we work through that and it doesn't stay that way. That's because there's an immune response to certain vegetables, or there's a bacterial overload that needs to be addressed. Okay, so let's see, what else do we want to hit on here? I think at this point, that's pretty good. I want to talk next time we come on. It's going to be sometime next week, probably on Monday. But we'll talk about what the signs and symptoms are. Are there food sensitivities? Are they creating your weight issues, which a lot of times can happen? So can chemical sensitivities, and what the most common culprits are. And then we'll move into reading labels and talking about a little deeper into gluten and dairy and FODMAPs and things like that. So stay tuned. This is going to be fun. I plan to do this on a regular basis. I do different topics and break them up a little bit into easy to digest pieces, pun intended. So stay tuned. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. And if you have any questions, let me see if there are any questions. Nope. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can comment here down below. You can go to my website, tastelifenutrition.com. I do have a new website coming out soon, so I'm super excited about that. But let me know if there's anything I can do. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later on. Bye.